welcome back to the Actory Magic Channel. I'm Steve, the Actory. Today we're going to be talking about Grolnok, the Omnivore. But before we get into that, I want to let you know, happy holidays from me to you, and I can't wait to see you next time. But let's get into it. All right, so Grolnok, he is a strange one. The flavor, obviously the flavor. He's eating somebody. He's got like an arm hanging out of his mouth. Grolnok, the Omnivore, is a 4-drop, a blue, a green, and 2 generic frog. 3/3. It says whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. Mill yourself 3 cards. Okay, whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter on it. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own and exile with croak counters on them. So once the thing is in exile with a croak counter out on it, it stays in exile with a croak counter. So if Grolnok goes away and it comes back, you can still cast all of the spells or all of the permanents or play all the permanents from exile with croak counters that you had before. So anytime that Grolnok comes back or leaves the battlefield, you're still going to have an opportunity to be able to play those. Now, I want to caution you with this build. If he gets too expensive to play anything from, to be able to play him again from the command zone, you might get locked out of a lot of cards that are stuck in exile. You've been warned. But let's get into it. All right, let's talk about this bad boy. So, honorable mentions. We want to go attacking, and we want to make sure we're attacking and not losing our creatures. I love these cards. They're not particularly amazing cards, but they make sure all of our frogs have some form of evasion. Archetype of Imagination, creatures you control have flying, creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. This is awesome. The only thing that they can deal with your creatures now is some kind of reach, okay? And that's awesome. Levitation is a 4-drop enchantment. This creatures you control have flying. Fantastic. Now let's talk all the frogs that are popular. Okay, so Spore Frog is the first one. He said is 1 green. He says sack. You sacrifice Spore Frog, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Really useful card. He's going to be able to save you anytime that he's out, but he's also can just go swinging. So just go swing 1 at the opponent that doesn't have any creatures, and now you're going to basically kind of draw 3 with Grolnok. It's pretty cool. Plexcaster Frogling is a green, blue, and a generic with Graft. If you're not familiar with Graft, the creature enters the battlefield with 1/1 counters on it. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may move a 1/1 counter from Plexcaster Frogling onto the new creature that just entered the battlefield. Pretty cool. Pay 2 generic, target creature with a 1/1 counter on it gains Shroud until end of turn. This is useful to help protect Grolnok himself. So you play Plexcaster in turn 3, and then you play Grolnok, and you move one of the 1/1 counters onto Grolnok. Now, you want to protect your commander with like Lightning Greaves and like Swiftfoot Boots, but if Plexcaster happens to be around, you can also give him protection with Shroud. Species Gorger is another one that's really, it's kind of like not a unique one, but it does something for you other than just beat face. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. This is really good for things like Snapcaster Mage, or if you want to reset Plexcaster with all of his 1/1 counters on him, you can do that. All right, let's talk more. Frogs. Jade Avenger. This one's got my heart. Dude, this is straight up a nod to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, he's got samurai swords, and he's a frog. He's awesome. 1 green, 1 generic, Bushido 2. Whenever he blocks or becomes blocked, he gets +2/2 until end of turn. This guy was a powerhouse in Limited, for the record. And he's a 2/2. So really, he's underwhelming in this format, in the extreme. But I love him. I want to kill somebody with that card, and I have not figured out how yet. All right, Trollbred Guardian. He says adapt 2. He's a 5/5 for 5. Pay green and 2 generic and put 2 1/1 counters on him. If he doesn't already have 1/1 counters on him. Each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it has trample. Fantastic. So now we end up with a 7/7 trample in Trollbred Guardian all by his lonesome. Galloping Lizrog is another great one that is just kind of, there's a sub-theme of 1/1 counters going on in your deck, and there probably should be. Galloping Lizrog will say whenever he enters the battlefield, he may remove any number of 1/1 counters from among creatures you control. If you do, put twice that many 1/1 counters on Galloping Lizrog. So I'm going to take 15 counters. I'm going to put 30 counters on Galloping Lizrog. Very cool. And he's trample. If you had some way of giving you haste, I don't know, lightning grooves, then people could just be dead. Dead, dead, dead. All right, so there's some of our beat sticks. Let's keep going. Omnivore, it says tap target creature becomes a 3/3 frog until end of turn. It does not mean that they lose their abilities. So some of the creatures that you have in the deck that you want to go swinging with that aren't frogs, you can turn them into frogs while they go attacking, and therefore mill yourself some more. Frog Behemoth is a 5-drop 4/4. Whenever it deals trample haste, which is cool on a green creature. When it deals combat damage to player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard. Put a 1/1 counter on Frog Behemoth. For each creature card exiled this way, you gain 1 life for each non-creature card exiled this way. He's very, very similar to Scavenging Ooze. It's slightly different in his wording. Croaking Counterpart, my favorite frog ever printed. A green, a blue, and 1 generic. Create a token. That's a copy of target non-frog creature. Any non-frog creature on the battlefield. Except it's a 1/1 green frog. So you get all the abilities, you get a 1/1 frog. And it can also be flashed back. This is awesome. I really, really love this. And the flavor, I mean, come on. That is awesome. Frog is the sincerest form of flattery. What? All right, Changelings. These are our honorary frogs. We've got Mass Vandal, 1 green, 1 generic Changeling at every creature type. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. So not only do you have the option of removing somebody else's artifact or enchantment, but you can also go swinging with your frog. Now, it does have the caveat that you have to exile a card from your creature card from your graveyard. It's not terribly hard to have this since there's so much board wipe in the format, but it is something to note that you do have to jump through a tiny little hoop. Chameleon Colossus is a 4/4 for a double green and 2 generic Changeling. It says pro black, pay 4. Chameleon Colossus gets XX until end of turn where X is its power. So if you have 8 mana, you can double its power twice, and from here he becomes a 16/16 for 8 mana. Pretty cool. And so you can certainly play with this guy and do some dirty things. If you just give him a bunch of 1/1 counters, then you're just doubling his power outright. Realm Walker is another great one. It says whenever it enters battlefield, choose a creature type. It's also every creature type. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. If you're going really deep into the frog theme here, Realm Walker is pretty great for that. So he'll keep you in the casting creatures gas. Oline. Okay, unique. This is where I get into things that I didn't quite I don't think I saw on EDH Rec too much of, but Gaia's Blessing was there. It's a 1 green, 1 generic. It says target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library. Draw a card. When Gaia's Blessing is put into your graveyard from your library, shuffle your graveyard into your library. So this is a or not a replacement effect. It does touch the graveyard. But this is interesting because with Grolnok, you're putting all your permanents into exile with croak counters. And everything else that's being milled is just kind of getting stuck. So all of your instants and your sorceries, those are getting stuck. So Gaia's Blessing is now going to give you a chance that whenever you mill over Gaia's Blessing, and you're going to, I mean, you should have it in the deck, it's going to shuffle all of those good cards back into your library, and it's going to mean that you're going to not get any lands, and you're only going to instants and sorceries, and that's really awesome. So you're going to increase the density of instants and sorceries in your library. So you're drawing gasoline straight off the top. Okie dokie. Let's go, Pokey Smokey. All right, World Shaper. I think I didn't see this guy on EDH Rec, but I think he fits in like a glove. 1 green, 3 generic. Whenever he attacks, you may put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. So if Grolnok happens to be in play, we're just going to put those permanents into exile with croak counters. Or if he's not in play, his stuff gets milled anyway from the other stuff we're doing in the deck. When World Shaper dies, put all land cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. So whether Grolnok's in play or not, World Shaper is going to do cool things for you. So I like World Shaper a lot. He's such a powerful card and very underrated in my opinion. All right, Cephalid Vandal. There are some Cephalids that made it in this deck, but I like this one because it kind of hangs out and kind of gets bigger over time. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a shred counter on Cephalid Vandal, then put the top card of your library into your graveyard for each shred counter on Cephalid Vandal. First turn, it's 1 card mill. Second card, it's 2 cards milled, and 3 cards, etc., etc. So every time you have Grolnok out, you're just going to have extra mill, putting more stuff and giving you more gas to go crazy with. All right, Dreamborn Muse, again, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts the top X cards from of their library into their graveyard, where X is the number of cards in their hand. This is going to hurt your opponents, and it's going to help you find the things you want. So it's kind of like draw, but not quite. And so Dreamborn Muse in this build, again, I didn't see this on EDH Rec. I really like it. And it's not terribly expensive. I think it's like a $3 or $4 card. Urtai's Familiar. He's a 1 blue, 1 generic. When he leaves play, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. This has been changed to say whenever he leaves play or phases out. For 1 blue, and he's got phasing himself. So for 1 blue, he cannot phase out till the next upkeep. So what's interesting is that he's going to be consistently going in and out of play, or phasing in and out, and milling cards from the top of your library. And this is not a terribly expensive card. He's a really, really cool card. I love the flavor of the old school art style, which is just bizarre to me. A lot of pastels, a lot of fun, a lot of kind of cartoonishness. I like it. Emery, Lurker of the Lock. Again, not an EDH Rec. It's 1 blue, 2 generic, 1/2. It costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. Okay, cool. Whenever it enters the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. Cool. Tap. Choose start artifact card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. If something happens to end up in your graveyard, Emery is going to be able to let you just play it again. So Swiftfoot Boots, Lightning Greaves. Oh, what's another good one? I think Elixir of Immortality would probably be really good. If you happen to mill over it, now you can just cast it from your graveyard. I like Emery, Lurker of the Lock. I think it's a really cool card. And I think that because there's so many mana rocks, there's so many other stuff. Like you can play the artifact land if you wanted to. Oh, wait, you can't play the artifact. Anyway, I think Emery works great. Next up, we have Range Assistant and Milliken. This is number 8 on our list. These both tap at mill a card and add a generic to your mana pool. This is awesome. So you're milling stuff from the top of your library, adding mana, you're ramping, you're doing the things you want to do. It's good. Crawling Sensation and Crawling Infestation. These are functionally the same thing. Okay, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 2 cards. Sweet, may. Both of them say you may. Okay, whenever 1 or more cards are put in your graveyard from anywhere for the first time each turn, put a 1/1 insect creature token onto the battlefield. Whenever 1 or more so that's Crawling Sensation is land cards. Whenever Crawling Infestation triggers is whenever a creature cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere during your turn. Create a 1/1 green insect creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. So this doesn't have to be on your turn. This can be on anybody's turns. Yeah, sorry, Crawling Sensation says any turn basically, and Crawling Infestation is only during your turn. So let's double check to see. Let's go back to the top. Let's check out Grolnok himself. He says, whenever a permanent is put in your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter. Okay, so that means that it does touch the graveyard before the trigger happens. So looking at these cards, so the cards are gonna check the graveyard. Crawling Sensation is gonna see that check in the graveyard, and then it's gonna be exiled with Grolnok. So we're gonna get our triggers from Crawling Sensation and Infestation, whether Grolnok's in play or not. So very cool cards, and these are gonna be our defenders that help keep us alive. All right, Tatiova, Benthic Druid. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, to gain 1 life and draw a card. That's a 5-drop for 3/3. Okay. Aesi, Tyrant of the Gyre Strait, is a 6-drop, blue, green, 4 generic, 5/5 serpent. You may play additional land on each of your turns. Great. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So these are going to be our card draw engines. Super good. Then we have Maskwood Nexus and Arcane Adaptation. If you're not heavy into the frogs and you want to like turn things into frogs, both of these cards are going to function very similar. They're going to create creatures you control are every type. The same is true for creatures you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. And so those are both, basically, I mean, they're basically the function of the same card. Maskwood Nexus is 4 generic, and Arcane Adaptation is 1 blue and 2 generic. Maskwood Nexus has the added ability of tapping for pay 3, tap it, create a blue shapeshifter creature token. It's every creature type. Fantastic. So Masquerade Nexus, I think, is a strict upgrade, but they're both going to do the thing you want it to do. All right, number 4, search for Escanta. It's a one blue, one generic. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. Then if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform search for Escanta. You don't have to transform search. In case you don't need Escanta the Sunken Ruin. It says tap for a blue. It's now a legendary land. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So you can just let search for Escanta. Just keep milling your cards every turn. Or you can look at it, decide to keep it, or put it in the graveyard. I really like search. It's great. Number 3, Thassa's Oracle and Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. These both say whenever you would draw a card, if you have no cards in your library, you win the game instead. So, but one has the trigger and one is just a static ability. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries is just a static ability. If you draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. Sweet. He has +1, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Also great for us, and it's a plus ability. Draw a card. -8, draw 7 cards. Then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. Awesome. Thassa's Oracle when it enters the battlefield. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Cool. So it's almost like a scry. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Then if X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. So a lot of people, they'll draw their whole deck and then they'll they'll play Thassa's Oracle in response to the trigger, draw their whole deck, that kind of thing, and then they'll just win. Number 2 on our list, Court of Cunning. I know, a 50-cent card made it to number 2. Yes, it's awesome. It says that whenever it's a 3-drop, whenever it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, which means at the end of your turn you draw a card. At the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players mill 2 cards. If you're the monarch, each of those players mills 10 cards. The way I like the reason I like this is because of the symmetry of it. It allows you to be able to hit everybody at the table and really punish them for being in the game. And being able to mill 2 cards is great. But you even can turn it off. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players mills 2 cards, or mills 10 if you're still a monarch. The way you gain the monarch from somebody else is you deal combat damage to them. Then you gain the monarchy, and at the end of your turn, you draw an extra card. So you're highly encouraged to go swinging at the person who's the monarch. All right, number 1 on our list. Drum roll, please. Traumatize. It had to be here. It's a 5-drop. It's a sorcery. It says target player puts the top half of his or her library rounded down into his or her graveyard. This is just going to give us a giant hand with Grolnok in play. And it's on curve with Grolnok. Grolnok is 4, Traumatize is 5. You happen to have a Lightning Greaves out there somewhere, things are good. All right, it's just so good. Traumatize is so good. And then, so what you can do is you can track this. So here's what's really interesting. So with Gaia's Blessing, Gaia's Blessing? Yeah, Gaia's Blessing. Where are you, buddy? Gaia's Blessing. So with Traumatize, Gaia's Blessing is going to check, and it's going to say, target player shuffles up to so it's going to go into the graveyard with Traumatize. Well, you can stack the abilities because they're both your abilities. Like actually no, sorry, you can't stack the ability. It's a static ability from Grolnok. So Grolnok is going to exile all your permanents with Croak counters, and Gaia's Blessing is going to hit the graveyard and then put all of your gasoline, all your good cards that you just didn't want in your graveyard, going to put them back into the deck. So with Traumatize, Gaia's Blessing is so good. All right, let's talk about 1A. 1A, drumroll. Mesmeric Orb. How could you not put it at the top of the list? That's a 2-drop. It says when a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. Tap all my mana. I'm going to draw all those cards or exile all those cards with Croak counters. And that's going to hurt my opponents because they're not going to have nearly the same mill efficiency that I'm going to have. And they're not going to have Gaia's Blessing. This is fantastic. It's amazing. It's going to remove their answers and give you more. All right, let's talk about some combo-ish. Hermit Druid is a 1 green. Human Druid, it says pay a green, tap, reveal cards on the top of your library until you reveal a basic land card. Don't put basics in your library. Put that card in your hand and all other cards revealed this way into your graveyard. Now, with Laboratory Maniac, that means that one green, one blue, two generic, 2/2. If you draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So at the beginning or at the end of somebody else's turn, you activate Hermit Druid, get rid of all your cards in your library, and then as you draw with Laboratory Maniac in play, you're going to win the game. And you can do the exact same thing with Jace Wielder of Mysteries or Thassa's Oracle. An interesting interaction with Thassa's Oracle is, say somebody... So, if you've put Endurance into exile with a Croak counter, the Evoke is an alternate casting cost, basically. So if something has gone awry and you need to recharge your library in response to the Thassa's Oracle trigger, you can. If you need to, you can. And there are some unique situations where that might be something you want to do. Say somebody stifles Thassa's Oracle, or say somebody counters Thassa's Oracle, and you've already got no graveyard. So it's, or sorry, no library. It's really great to have Endurance on tap, and it's a permanent, so it's going to get exiled into with a Croak counter on it. So Endurance is so good in this deck. So good. Anyway, thank you so much for coming out. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow on the next time we do a Commander video. Bye. Hey, where's the button?